This is not just big tech going after people like Kari Lake or myself or Elizabeth TikTok. This is the government. It is one and the same. Big tech has specified this. So if you ever hear the argument from the silly libertarians who think that legalizing black tar heroin will solve all our problems and that NFTs are the way of the future, and by the way, whatever you want to do, I don't care. But my point is those people are dumb. Now, no, this isn't a private business issue. Why? Okay, well, let me give you a few examples. This week, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, just so you know, announced in one of their posts that it would be cracking down on, quote, disinformation ahead of the 2022 midterms. Quote, we've focused on preventing voter interference, connecting people with reliable information, and providing industry-leading transparency for ads about social issues, elections, and politics. And by the way, this comes after Meta, Facebook, this company, announced that it would limit political content in news feeds. What kind of political content? Content relating to high inflation, gas prices, the IRS, terrible foreign policy. Think about that for a second. Why would you limit any content? Used to be election meddling.
Yeah.
Right? They used to say, well, you can't say hate speech. Now they're going to limit content about inflation?
They don't want you to see it.
It couldn't possibly be more boring and relevant.
By the way, I love when they say reliable information. According to who?
The CDC. You can't post about the IRS according to the IRS. And that brings us to some other issues that we've seen. In case you've forgotten, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. That's right. I always mix them up. You have people like Wray, you have McCabe, you have Comey. Brennan was another guy. You know, they're all assholes.
It's true.
It's all assholes nowadays, kids. Director Andrew McCabe, this is the guy who works for the FBI, who Facebook, Twitter, Alphabet use as a reliable source, along with the CDC. I don't know if they will now that they're completely restructuring.
Probably not.
Andrew McCabe, head of the FBI, likened conservatives and parents, to domestic extremists.
Are you going to catch this threat if your focus is only on the traditional right-wing extremists?
Tell us, Sideshow Bob.
We know about the quote-unquote fringes of the right-wing movement. And I think the answer to that is no. I can tell you from my perspective of spending a lot of time focused on the radicalization of international terrorists and Islamic extremists and extremists of all stripes. What we are seeing and what Professor Pape's research makes clear is that this group shares many of the same characteristics of those groups that we've seen radicalized along entirely different ideological lines. This wave of political violence.
They're blowing themselves up on planes?
It's not just confined to the Capitol. It's going on in school boards around the country. It's going on in local elections. It's happening, even to healthcare workers.
Okay, so he likened you, conservatives, to terrorists, radicalized terrorists, just to be clear. Here's how you know it's not true, okay? Put yourself in this headspace for a second. Close your eyes. All right. Imagine you were on a plane, okay? 747. And a guy, in a ticking sport jacket and a turban stands up and you think, oh no. And he yells out, men are men and women are women, and sits back down. Would you count your lucky stars that you got off scot-free? Yes, this is what we are dealing with, and the FBI is monitoring you.
I don't know if I'd be able to hear him in Coach.
Everybody shut up. I have the best of Thomas Sowell. Sits back down.
I don't agree with all of it.
I don't, but
I do agree with many.
I don't agree with what you say, but I will fight for your right to say it. Also, next time I don't want the middle seat, but you do what you can. That's...
This plane is going to land exactly where it's supposed to.
This is the last time I sit next to Kevin Smith. He needs to pay for 2 seats. Now, I'm not going to play the clip because we have Kari Lake coming on here soon, and we'll continue the segment after that. But James O'Keefe, obviously Project Veritas, they had an internal bulletin on domestic violent extremists. Let me just give you a recap. According to the DHS, you can be labeled an extremist. And by the way, this is what Facebook, YouTube, Google, Twitter, they all use as their guidelines. According to the DHS, you can be labeled an extremist if you happen to think that the government is overstepping its bounds. In other words, if you're conservative. If you think there might be a chance that elections aren't 100% fair. And if you had any doubt as to what the intelligence community thinks of you, the former CIA director, Michael Hayden, cleared it up on his Twitter yesterday. Because, this probably needs a little bit of clarity.
Yeah.
He responded to a tweet calling Republicans the most nihilistic, dangerous, and contemptible force in politics. Here's what he said. This is what the Former CIA director said, "I agree, and I was a CIA director."
I watched all of them.
And now we add 80,000 plus agents to the IRS. Well, sorry, employees. So we have Meta, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, the FBI, the DHS. They're all on the same page. Throttle content by labeling extremist or labeling it disinformation. And then, of course, the government can't technically throttle free speech. So what do? They have other people. They have their lackeys. They have their cronies go in and do it. It's their Sammy the Bull. That's Facebook. That's Twitter. That's YouTube. Let me give you a few examples of, by the way, collusion between big tech and these intelligence communities. And Carrie Lake, I know, is here. We'll get there in just 2 minutes. Just want to get this in to set the stage so that she doesn't have to do all that legwork and then, get banned from Rumble. April 2021. I'm just going to rattle these off here. New York Times writer and COVID critic Alex Berenson, he provided concrete evidence that the White House officials colluded with Twitter to ban him. Okay? He posted the documents showing Twitter employees discussing a meeting with Andy Slavitt, the senior advisor to President Biden's COVID-19 response team. Okay, this is what they said. How was the White House? Overall, pretty good. They had one really tough question about why Alex Berenson hasn't been kicked off the platform. Then he was banned 3 months later. Here's some more examples. September 2019, big tech officials, companies like Facebook, right, the usual bad actors, they met with the U.S. intelligence community to discuss election integrity. That's kind of relevant to today. Another time in 2019, CIA's Aaron Berman left the agency to become the senior product policy manager for misinformation. Where? At Meta, Facebook, Instagram. This is what happens, right? We talk about these unelected officials, for example, like Fauci. That's what, when people talk about the swamp, we're not just talking about your representatives. We're talking about people who are representative of no one. And what happens is they used to become lobbyists, right, for maybe the pork industry, or maybe some of you would talk about firearms. Now they go and work for big tech. It's a revolving door of bullshit. CIA, FBI, go to Facebook, maybe come back in, maybe go to the CDC, act as a consultant. So the CIA's Aaron Berman left the agency to become the senior product policy manager for misinformation at Meta. We just saw the other CIA guy. Can't remember his name. I always forget all these stupid names. Asshole. Who then said, "You're right," and I was at the CIA. We now see when the veil is lifted, and they're no longer forced to act as though they're unbiased because the FBI and the CIA still think that we buy that. They say, "Oh, by the way, no, none of that. Everything that I just said was bullshit." 2019, FBI's Director Don Burton became the Senior Director of Strategy and Operations for Legal, Public Policy, Trust, and Safety, where? Twitter. March 2020, FBI's Karen Walsh became Twitter's Director of Corporate Resilience. February 2020, Mark Zuckerberg called for more government regulation of social media. Why would he do that? Think about that. Why do the big boys always support Democrats? All of them support Democrats, overwhelmingly. Didn't we think that Republicans were the party of big business? Let's look at the donations from Zuckerberg, from Bezos, from Wojcicki, from Dort, any of these people, not to mention their employees, okay? October 2020, Twitter, Facebook blocked the spread of the Hunter Biden story. You guys remember that? Of course, whistleblowers said that the FBI colluded. We have December 2021, Dr. Fauci, I use that term loosely, colluded with Wired Magazine and Facebook to censor the Great Barrington Declaration. For those of you who don't remember, that was saying that lockdowns don't work. And by the way, now the CDC says we might have been wrong about a whole lot of that. July 2021, the White House admitted to flagging content to Facebook they considered COVID disinformation. And of course, that content was removed because they used CDC and the White House to establish their guidelines. Oh, and by the way, they got rid of the dislike button because there's never been a president, former vice president, more disliked than Joe Biden. Don't forget, February 2022, Jen Psaki was so comfortable in the authoritarianism that she encouraged Spotify on a public platform openly to censor what she declared COVID misinformation, or as we know it now, shit the CDC was wrong about.
So our hope is that all major tech platforms and all major news sources, for that matter, be responsible and be vigilant to ensure the American people have access to accurate information on something as significant as COVID-19. That certainly includes Spotify. So this disclaimer, it's a positive step, but we want every platform to continue doing more to call out mis and disinformation while also uplifting accurate information.
Now, I will give her credit. I understand that maybe she was earnest. She didn't want misinformation spreading. She even believes that the vaccine is 100% effective, even when it comes to her own family. Here's actually a recent video of Jen Psaki getting, actually giving her husband the 11th booster.
You might feel a little prick.
Two final examples. You know what? Look, what they do in their own bedroom is their own business. March 2022, ex-CIA data and intelligence analyst Deborah Borman joined Meta as a trust and safety project manager. And of course, the little mundane detail that in April of this year, the former Vice President Biden administration attempted to set up what was effectively a ministry of truth until the backlash forced them to close down. All references are available at louderwithcrowder.com, and very few of them, if any, are conservative sources. You can see it's Washington Post, it's Wall Street Journal, it's New York Times. Are you starting to understand that it's not about private businesses? They are the enforcers of the government. And this is the first time today that I can think of where they removed a winning current gubernatorial candidate whose policies and platform can directly affect their bottom line. A bottom line, by the way, that's padded through disinformation and dishonesty, which brings me to, I'm really glad, I believe we have her